Hey guys, Game Advisor here, and today we're going to be talking about some 7 Days to Die tips. These are beginning, intermediate, and advanced tips, and a lot of them were things I still didn't know until well over 100 hours of gameplay. So let's go ahead and jump into these, and let us know down in the comments if there's anything we missed. Starting off with one of the more simple ones, which is to look for bookcases. Now, bookcases in 7 Days to Die, if you don't know, will contain books. These books will teach you a skill of some kind that will give you essentially a permanent perk or benefit. That is why it is so important to constantly be looking for them, and the most common place to find said books or schematics is usually going to be in bookcases. You can find these in houses, or if you're really lucky, you'll even come across a bookstore where you can go and search for them individually within said bookstore. Alrighty, so number 2 is to build in order to gain levels. Now, we're not talking about just simply placing the little blocks with frames, we're talking about actually filling them in. Whether you're building a wooden block or you're building a cement block, you're going to get a ton of XP for it. Just to give you an example here, if you kill one zombie, you'll get somewhere between 4 and 800 XP, whereas if you fill in a cement block, you're going to get 400 each. And you could have that crafting all the materials you need while you're out doing said killing or farming or looting or whatever it is you're doing in order to get a ton of XP whenever you come home, or try to upgrade your base while you're at it on top of it. Building is just such a universal tool, and it is so good for getting those levels as quickly as possible. After that is number 3 on our list, which is cotton plants will let you make bandages and give you cloth, which can be extremely important in a ton of healing recipes, as well as other recipes that you're going to use especially early on in your game. If you don't know this, all you need to do is go punch, melee, whatever, some little cotton plants. They're really easy to find. You can see them on screen. They got the little white little dots on them. When you break those, you're going to get some cotton. You can then turn that in your inventory into cloth, and then use the cloth to make bandages, which will stop bleeding. Cloth is also used, and bandages are used in many different recipes, so I highly recommend that if you guys do see some cotton, go ahead and grab yourself some, and maybe pick up like a stack of 100. It's not that rare to find, but people often don't know this is how you get this, and it will save you a ton of effort later on from having to scrap things when you could have just walked outside your door, smacked a few bushes, and been good to go. Coming in at number 4 on our list is to collect all the brass you can get your hands on. If you don't know, in 7 Days to Die, there are a ton of brass items in the game, and a ton of different brass itself that you can find within it. For an example here, you can get doorknobs off doors, sinks off of sinks, you can get trophies in random bags, and all sorts of other different things that will give you brass to be able to smelt and then use to make bullet casings. Now, if you're really desperate for brass, or you just happen to have an abundance of money, you can actually smelt down a token in order to turn it into brass. That brass, again, can then be used for bullets. So it's totally up to you and what you want to do with it, but it is something to keep in mind, as you get into the late game, you're going to need tons and tons of ammo to survive the Horde Nights. So if you are struggling to find that brass and you're in a pinch, just throw $1,000 inside the furnace and boom, you've got 1,000 brass. Number 5 on the list today is going to be that bedrolls will prevent zombies from spawning nearby. However, this only works for your most recently placed bedroll. This is something that's important and you probably should keep in mind, but you can turn this up in your settings if that is something you want. If you want to have a bigger safe zone where you don't have to worry about a zombie spawning on top of you, you can do that. This is super useful in a ton of ways to know, as obviously if you put your bedroll in your base, it's going to prevent the zombies from spawning in a very close proximity. However, it will not prevent them from spawning not that much further out unless you turn that up in your settings. Also, if you do have a horde base and you decide to place a new bedroll over there, only the most recent one will count. So do keep that in mind when using this tip. Here we are with number 6, which is falling on hay will dramatically reduce your fall damage. From what I understand, there is a limit to how much it can reduce. Just to give you an example here in this clip, I went ahead and built up 14 blocks on top of the tower I already had, jumped down and took 0 fall damage by landing on a hay block. These are super easy to make. They take like 10 grass and you're good to go. Now, This can be used in a variety of ways. It can be used to set up an escape route for whenever you get overwhelmed on your horde base. They can be used in order to jump out of a building whenever you're trying to quickly get away. All over, these things are super useful, and I wish I had known this tip, as this was one of the tips I actually did not know for the longest time and has so many great uses for it. Number 7 on our list is doing actions while in an area will generate something called heat. Now, if you don't know what heat is, it is essentially going to increase the spawn amount of enemies like screamers, for an example, within your area. Anything can generate heat in the game. Mining, having an open flame, building, all those things, farming wood, you name it, you're doing it, you're killing a zombie, anything in that area will generate heat within that area that will attract more zombies. Now, do keep in mind there is an exception to this rule, and that is things like moving things around in your inventory or things like that, or just walking around very slowly. It won't actually trigger this, but just about everything else you do, driving a vehicle, I think, will actually generate a small amount. I'm not 100% on that one, but either way, anything you actually do will create heat, and it is something you need to keep in mind, as the more active you're being in an area, like your base for an example, the more likely it is to attract more zombies to that location. For number 8 here, we are almost done, which is going to be how you understand building of blocks. If you put a frame block down, for an example, you will see it has a mass. This is the weight of the block, and then you also will see it has a horizontal support amount. This is how much weight the block can actually hold when building out from any of its given sideways pointing faces, or horizontal, whatever you want to call it. Now, when you do build on those horizontal faces, for an example, in the video clip you can see here, each block weighs about 5 pounds, and I'm moving it out 8 blocks, which would be 40 pounds. Now, as soon as I put that 9th block on, the entire thing collapses. Of course, you could have just put another one on the ground there, but it's something to keep in mind when you're building. If you're not sure why your building's collapsing, it's because it can't support the weight of the blocks you have, and this is the easiest way to figure out how much weight the blocks you actually do have can support. Alrighty, so our final tip here is probably one of the most vital for new and intermediate players, which is that zombies pathing will always attempt to take the path of least resistance. Now, there is some ways you can do some trickery here in order to fool the zombies, but for the most part, they're not totally stupid. They will always try to take whatever they perceive to be the easiest route. This is why things like maze bases work so well, because the zombies don't think, oh, hey, instead of breaking down this wall, why don't I just go around this path? However, there is a limitation to this, where if they have to go too far or they have to go through things that will harm them, they will then perceive that as danger and assess it with a certain level of threat. Once that threshold reaches a certain amount, it will instead just decide to break through the wall. This is why I always encourage people to try out things like maze bases. There are tons of horde-based designs out there you guys are welcome to look up, but at the end of the day, just keep in mind the zombies pathing will always attempt to take whatever it perceives as least resistance. Okay, that is going to be it for this video today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like if you liked the video, dislike if you disliked the video. Let us know down below too if we forgot any super important tips you guys think we should mention, and maybe consider checking out some of our other tips videos if you guys actually found this one pretty useful. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.